going on. I want to know then who was in that discussion.
It's not as normal as you make it sound. It was items, I was meeting with the president before this discussing items, and that's what we do, and you understand that. And as we were looking at items, those 3 items to present to the board a little while back, that's when we looked at.
Are you talking about roofing? The 3 items being roofing? Okay.
3 different roofing.
Right.
That's when
Right.
the discussion, and Mr. Torres had some questions and concerns for us to look into some information about the status of asbestos and the lead and things like that.
And a lot of that, excuse me that I interrupt, but on the other hand, with that, it wasn't something that we put out there. We sent someone to look at it and say, hey, there is this, that, and the other thing in that building. This is something that was talked about when Mark was still here. And even Mark was talking about, making that building uninhabitable because of the amount of toxins in there, I think lead and asbestos. And so I think there is a company, do you remember, Shar, a company that came out and tried to do some sort of not a remediation, but an assessment or testing of the building?
I want to say Midland, and that's paper. Midwest.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's all. It's nothing that we established or
Okay.
we just kind of mock it. And it's just the history of that. And talking to the water department guy, he's like, yeah, that water service line that building is as old as most of the buildings in town. I'm sure, he says, without looking at it, that at least 50% of the water service line is on lead. And he described the way the basement of the building is. So I take his knowledge. He's been in town for
So we haven't,
30 years.
but what you're saying then is that this was just based on a conversation. There was
Conversations.
no official.
And if we
No
go out
official-
and try to, yes.
Well, I mean, they shut the water and the sewer off, so it's, I'm sure they did because we okayed it. It just didn't sit right with me, George, because we talked about that. I don't remember Mark Alba, maybe Sharon remembers, I don't remember Mark Alba talking about the condition of the building and being unsafe. I would think that if you came to my house was built in the early 50s, I'm sure there's lead everywhere in pipe joints. And I would say that Lyons is an older community than ever where I live, so that that would be a problem in many establishments. But it just was that, I didn't hear about that. I didn't see, if we brought somebody out from Midwest, I don't remember getting a copy of a report that said there's asbestos in all of our buildings. That's just the way it is. They're old. And it's encapsulated, and we removed the tile and put new tile in. We got rid of all that 9-inch tile probably 20 years ago. And so I think that you could say in most school buildings that are this age. And then I just thought it odd that the village manager, which is kind of your boss, wrote a letter only to you. And, asking, like, out of the blue here in April, if we're going to have any structures on Joliet Avenue that were going to be demolished. So, I mean, you could agree with me or disagree with me, but it just doesn't seem kosher with that. And then did everybody on Joliet Avenue get a letter for every old building? Are they going to tear them down?
This is mainly the reason why. I talked about the building with Chris, and I think I talked to somebody else about the building back then, and the reason for it was the reconstruction of Joliet Avenue. And so I had a conversation with the water department, which that man is really knowledgeable. He knows about a village like the palm of his hand. And so the concern to the building is it's not being used on a regular basis. Water is just staying in the water service line. Therefore, buildings that haven't been used in over a couple hundred days, the water does become contaminated. You don't want anyone drinking out of it. I mean, not like everyone's going in there and drinking this water, but you don't want that open chance.
No, I don't want anybody to get sick. You're absolutely right. I'm just saying that I would think that we would have had some kind of an inspection or something before we decide to, go ahead and tear the building down. It just put a question in my mind, but it's I mean,
They
it's
put
over
in
and
evidence
done
of
with.
the water service line being lead. It's almost.
I don't doubt the
100%.
expertise of the guy. He's been
And we
around
can
a
still
long
send
time.
a portion of that water service line, which is still inside of our building, to get tested. And I mean, you just gotta look at it, but you know, to be more technical, we can spend the money, we can send it out to be tested, and just, you know.
The water's off to it anyway. And that ties into my next concern of storage of that stuff. Now, I know it's over here in the small gym, and I shared my concern with you about there are records that we have to keep. We have to keep student health records
Oh, we talked
forever.
about it last time.
Right,
50 years or
right.
something.
And there's, the stuff that we have has to stay for 60 years or forever.
Right.
Char has the application on that, so she knows what it is. So here's my concern, one of them. Student records are highly private. Where are we going to put it? Because if you talked about this room above the gym, are you talking about the mechanical room upstairs? And if you are, that's not a very big room, and I'm not sure how much the fire department will let us keep in there.
Right, you
The
don't want to
records-
create a fire.
Right, the records that are out here are old, part of them are old personnel records. They have people's social security numbers on them, all kinds of private information, and that nobody, the reason that they were moved, and originally they were moved to the upstairs at the Legion because they had an air conditioner put in there to save the paper, you know, from disintegrating. And I think, you know, that since then they moved them away because that's what happens. People just do stuff without getting permission. But I'm very concerned about, I know you'll find a place for the extra desks or whatever, but those records shouldn't be in a place where people have easy access to them. Just because of the nature. I'm not saying anybody's going to do anything to them, but we have, especially those health records.
Those are secure.
Those are
Yeah.
secure. We have records over in that boiler room at the ad building that need to be kept safe. And when they moved the stuff out of where it's your copy room now, it was just kind of willy-nilly taken over to that Legion, and that concerns me. That concerns me because I don't think we need to find a place where we're good stewards of that information. And I just don't see any of our buildings. The one thing, and I shared this with you, the one thing that custodians and principals have always kind of complained about is that there's not enough storage in the buildings now. Now we've taken all of this stuff that's out there, and I didn't look to see what it looks like. That we don't have a room for it, a secure room for at least that stuff, and I hope that you'll take that into consideration
For
and
sure.
move that.
For sure,
And,
yeah.
you know, to be honest with you, Marcia, I don't think that where they're at, they're any less or more secure there would be any room in our district, because anyone comes and goes from that building at their own leisure. Just kind of
Well,
go.
you don't have the number of
We don't
people
know
going
who-
into the Legion, though, that you have, or even the administration building.
I understand
that
that.
you-
If we
that
would have
you-
placed them in
Right.
any confined area of these buildings or any other building, I'm sure that we would have made sure that the room that they're in is
Yeah.
air conditioned or climate controlled and locked. And maybe just a little
Okay.
we have a
Yeah.
kitchen.
Yeah.
Things will be moved before school starts. It's-
Yeah,
And they want to have the, because of the dust and
Bob called me
whatever
today.
might be on them.
Bob Cope called me today and said that he sent me some proposals of where to put them. I haven't looked at the
That's all right.
email yet. I will take a peek at them.
Yeah. I guess my other question with that is there, when you said room above the gym, is there some space above the big gym that we're not aware of? Or is that what you were talking about, that mechanical room?
I believe they were looking at creating some space in that mechanic.
Okay.
But I'll
Not that
take a
big.
look at these,
Okay.
his proposals, and we'll make sure there's
Yes,
space, that's for sure.
especially
Yeah.
those student records, okay.
And then I thought going forward, when it's economically feasible, today you scan a lot of records and store them electronically to reduce storage space.
Right.
Yeah, that came up at the last meeting, the thing that, and we can do it, you have to go through the Secretary of State. One of the things that, when I went to a class on that, because that's a responsibility of the superintendent secretary, was when they talked about digitizing that stuff, you have to be very careful that you will be able to have access to that at a later date, that you have a program that will sustain that.
We
Some
also,
did
we
it,
also, you can find a company nowadays, like Tiger Shredding Company. There's so many companies out there. They either shred stuff you don't need,
They scan
security,
stuff.
and they also storage stuff that you need preserved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right though, Marge.
We use
Yeah,
that in
And
my
the
jobs
cost
for
of that
medical
would be
records.
pennies on the dollar, rather than utilizing valuable real estate in our district, so.
It just depends on what you're doing and where it is,
Right.
because if you, and I'm not saying you need it often, but when you have a teacher that's going to, and that may change now that our teacher population is getting somewhat younger, but there have been many times that somebody from that ad building had to go through all those records. So wouldn't want to see these things stored 6 miles away
And
and
we
someone
have
having to go through
If
that.
we have them stored in some sort of an order, they will actually, you would have like lot number, badge, and so on and so
They put a
forth.
scan, that barcode on.
Exactly,
And
so
there's
they will go
Iron
right
Mountain, there's one
to
in
the box
Bolingbrook.
that needs to
And
be
they just
pulled.
What's it called?
That's a big
Iron
job.
Mountain.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's one of
They
them.
barcode them,
Right.
and then
Yes.
you just know
Yeah.
who's on that barcode.
There's
Yeah.
so many. we
Yeah,
can
but
just kinda get
I'm sure there are.
pricing
My
for something
concern
like
is that they're not, far away, that if we have to access that, that
Right.
we'll be able to get them and that they'll put me in a secure place, especially those student records. Especially those student records.
sensible information.
Okay, that was it.
Okay, I have 3 things.
Sure.
One, just make clarification, correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't hear you give Mark a response when she asked, who were the other board members with you? Okay. Second, last meeting, I addressed you and I had asked you or told you that one of the parents came up to me. I didn't see any mention of that. I have parents coming up to me every now and then, and I tell them that I would bring it up to you and George, but then I never see a response. So basically, it's making me look like a liar because they're not giving a response. The third is, Vito hit on it electronically. The courts are doing it. They got court records from 10 years ago. They're all in the system. Why can't we just go ahead and do that? The only thing is, who's going to have access to that? Because like with the court system, I have to have a password to get in there. But I could look up court documents from, let's say, 1989 or something. So it's all in there versus them warehousing them. Because they used to warehouse anything 10 years and older. They're getting rid of that and doing it all electronic.
Well, that's something you said you're going to look into. Maybe Winifred might even have a source for that too.
You could rep-
Yeah, I think if the courts are doing it, but just something that we take those records seriously, that's all.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm done.
Oh, thank you. Moving on with public comments. Char?
Okay, the first public comment is from Thomas Weiner. What has the district been doing to ensure that the schools will be ready to open on time, such as a good deep cleaning of all classrooms? Is there any type of contingency plans in place to make sure the schools can open once you get guidelines from the state? I sure hope that the schools open on time, as the students need to be in school for learning. They need the teacher-student interaction. They need the social interaction with their friends and classmates. Thank you. Okay, Valerie Fasselt. My name is Valerie Fasselt, and I am a parent in this district. And I want Mr. Rivera and the school board majority members to know that you have disrespected the community beyond comprehension. We alerted Mr. Rivera in emails. We sent him public comments. We stood outside the school, 50-plus parents and community members, with signs protesting the rehire of Carol Baker because she was a terrible superintendent and will make a horrible principal. In fact, I have so little trust of Carol Baker that I removed my middle schooler from GWMS and have opted to homeschool her for the duration of Carol Baker's position as principal in our school district. Thank God that I trust the principal at my youngest daughter's school to do right by the kids, or I would only be a taxpayer and not a parent in this district anymore. I do not expect a lot from this school board. My bar of expectations is really low after seeing how you voted since you took power in May. However, to rehire someone who has a horrible track record and no experience as a principal was far below even the bare minimum of decorum I expected. Okay, Robert Thomas. I am a community member. Mr. Rivera and Mr. Torres, I would like written responses to the following questions. Mr. Torres, you have been a board member for at least 5 years, including the last year serving as board president. Were you aware, or did you just not care, that when you discussed school board hires with the mayor of Lyons, Mr. Getty, before they were on the agenda and voted on, that you were breaking the code of conduct, privacy laws, and the oath you took as a board member. Some examples I want directly addressed are the hiring of the HR director, the hiring of the business manager, the hiring of the maintenance director, the destruction of the Legion, the hiring of Carol Baker for a hybrid position. Mr. Rivera, were you aware of these breaches? If you were, did you alert West 40 or ISB as you are obligated to? If you did not know, after discussing these breaches with Mr. Torres, will you alert West 40 and ISB? Please notify the public of any recommendations from West 40 and ISB using direct communication from them. Okay, next. Nathan Westfall, a parent in SD 103. Mr. Torres, Ms. Quintero, Ms. Rodriguez, you attended the last board meeting in person and saw an outpouring of community members that were protesting with signs telling you they did not want Carol Baker rehired into School District 103. You ignored them. By doing so, you failed to do your duty as school board members. You violated the trust of this community. We are stakeholders in our school district. We made you aware via 8 public comments, via protesting, via signs, and via emails to Mr. Rivera that this community does not trust Carol Baker after her missteps as superintendent, including a breach of asbestos that she lied about and tried to cover up, as well as the mishandling of a weapon incident that involved a student bringing brass knuckles to school with a blade on it. All 4 members of the school board majority, you ignored the community and ignored the parents when you voted to hire Carol Baker, who is unfit to be principal at GWMS. Ignoring community members is a violation of the code of conduct and the oaths that you took last year. Fix your mistake. Okay, Joanne Schaefer. It is astounding that the board would have a closed meeting today since in 3 days at least 50 103 parents and taxpayers could attend. As I have said many times before, I think the board spends too much time thinking of things to damage our district. To mention just a few, but extremely prominent. Number 1, nurses' aides in every building fired expecting to hire 6 RNs. Cost saving. Before-after program director fired. 3, Costello librarian fired. 4, QNS hired an experienced tech company. 5, Carol Baker rehired at almost same salary she made as superintendent. 6, an experienced person hired as principal for middle school, no elementary experience. 7, assistant principal for Lincoln has had a dozen jobs in 10 years. 8, no preschool director, and it's almost July 9th. No notification to parents regarding registration or if there will be a school soon. If there will be school soon. 10, financial deficits, overspending, top-heavy for a small district. 11, fire 2 prominent, highly qualified central office employees. 12, let 4 custodians in the midst of a pandemic go. 13, violations of Open Meetings Act. I could go on, but I won't. I am hoping that this board will wake up and get on the ball before it's too late. She had a couple more words. And our children are affected. Please wake up and start acting like school board members. Okay, Earl Johnson. Good evening, board members. In a comment President George Torres gave to the Des Plaines Valley newspaper last week regarding the rally held outside GWMS during last month's board meeting, President Torres stated, the numbers represented a very small percentage of parents in the district. Mr. Torres, remember, a small percentage of parents can represent a big turnout, like in 2017, when 3 underdog women, not aligned with the mayor of Lyons, who's again under investigation for corruption and for whom you accepted campaign cash from, beat 3 candidates you supported, causing change in 103. These underdogs accomplished this by having a small percentage of parents fed up with your politically motivated hand come out and vote. You can keep taking your cues from the mayor of Lyons and the corrupt individuals he hangs out with, or start listening to a very small percentage of parents in the district. And do what's right for the children of 103, because April 2021 is right around the corner, and with all your recent actions and decisions, you're energizing the parents to come out and vote for change in 103. I'd like to add that a petition put together last minute before last board's meeting received 399 signatures regarding not hiring Dr. Carol Baker. That's it.
Okay, Lorna.
George, I'm sorry, I forgot I had one quick question it's super quick. We all know this is not a normal school year. But we know in a normal school year, there's always summer slide and all that, and all of our at-risk yellow kids. this year's summer school-wise, as far as like any online or?
Yes, and so the ESY is currently going on for the special needs students, and toward, I'm failing on the dates, but the second session,
The
I think.
Kickstart,
Yes, the
our Jumpstart?
ESL and the
Math and reading?
math and reading will be kicking up as scheduled. And additionally, what we did is opened up every software program for every student, because we let them keep the Chromebooks over the summer. And what we did is hired some engagement coaches under the summer school dynamic or I think that's Entitled one maybe, to monitor how many kids are being active and to reach out and try to encourage about 2 days a week of work on the software from home.
So will that just be, for lack of a better term, will it just be like, here's the work, do it? Or will there be like Zoom classroom kind of things?
The big mass one is the two traditional ones will be Google Meets and kind of how we did remote learning.
Right.
The other software programs have tutorials and stuff, so that's the engagement coaches are working with them to keep them engaged with the software programs, but it will not have direct instruction from a teacher. But it was something we wanted. We know since March 17th that, remote learning is not like a teacher in the classroom, and therefore we wanted to make something accessible to all students. So they did, the participation is going fairly well. It's certainly not all students, but it's I'll ask Derek to share the numbers, because it was in the hundreds of kids being engaged that are not set for one of these other summer school segments. So it's at least, helping.
So every grade, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So every grade has access to those softwares?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
there's some lower, for like Smarty Ants is
Okay.
for the lower grade levels, and then different software programs for them.
So like my daughter can log on and do some exercises
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
I was just going to say as a suggestion, it would have been really nice had you dropped us an email about this, because we do get questions. As Winifred said, people come up to us, they want to know what's going on. And we could at least say, yeah, there's something planning, here's who you need to call, but we're not getting that kind of feedback. There's so many things going on that we kind of find out. A registration, I had a parent call me today and say that she heard all registration was going to be online. Maybe it is. I mean, I'm not new stuff. And I don't care what you do. You're the superintendent. But we're not getting that word. And just in a BUD update, just a general email to say to us, hey, we've decided that online registration is the way we want to go. Okay, you're the guy in chief, but we're not getting that. And so it'd be nice for people to know, hey, my kid could get on Google, whatever it is, to do that. So
Is that already set on stone, though, registration online?
Yes. Yes, that was definitely to avoid the crowds.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, they do get crowded,
Right.
so.
And other school districts have been doing that where they don't check residency every year, once you go in, unless somebody would complain. So it makes sense to do it. It does. And that's a choice of the administrators or whatever,
So
but
we still
it
have
just
that
would be
service
nice.
with that,
Yeah, I think another year, I think
Currently, yes.
Carol signed a 1-year contract, I think. So they would be using them or not, whether we still have to pay them. But if you can think about it in the future, just drop us an email.
Sure.
Just say what's going on.
Bud, because we're really not getting a bud.
No.
Like Derek could have put all of that summer school stuff
Right.
in a bud. Yeah, the online registration could have been. I mean, all of that's
Sure,
so
we'll
great
get back
about
on
bud.
track, yeah, hopefully with all the dynamics settling a little bit,
Thank you.
for sure.
All right, moving on, year-to-date financials. The financials are attached to the agenda for the public, but just for informational purposes. Moving on, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I would like the bill list pulled off. I have 3 questions on it.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
To approve, are we voting to approve the consent agenda without the bill list?
Yeah, once you ask to have it removed.
Okay.
So
All right.
So we'll vote on that separate.
So we're voting on the bill list without the bills. I mean, the
Mhm.
consent agenda without the bills.
Without
Okay.
B1, correct?
Right, okay.
Yes.
roll call.
Okay, roll call.
Okay. Winifred Rodriguez.
Who seconded?
Yeah, who seconded? Yeah.
I first,
You made the motion.
I made a motion. I first.
I'll second.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Yep.
That's probably my fault, because
I
didn't
got
on the bill
mixed
list.
up for a second. Yeah, okay. Winifred Rodriguez.
Yes.
Olivia Quintero.
Yes.
Vito Campanelli.
Yes.
Shannon Johnson, absent. Marge Uvasek.
Yes.
Sharon Anderson.
Yes.
And George Torres.
Yes.
Okay, so my questions for the bill list is, when I went through, I saw that we, and I do know that you, Mr. Rivera said we were going to take on an account temp for, and then my question is, how long do you think we're going to have that? I noticed that it's costing us $2,000. Is that $2,000 per month? And then,
Do you know that issue, that time frame for the bills?
Yeah, the vendor is locked in, so every 2 weeks for her pay.
so on that bill list, is that $2,000 for 2 weeks?
I believe it is.
I believe so.
So that's $4,000 a month?
Yes, that would be $4,000 a month.
And we got rid of an employee, and it's going to cost us $4,000 a month. Do we not have to bid out for that, or is there a length of time that we're going to have that?
My intention is that it's temporary. And so
Okay,
we're
define
transitioning-
temporary, and I'm not holding you to it. Is temporary, what is temporary to you? 3 months? 6 months? Five, you
I was
know?
actually talking about this morning, is trying to get a gauge, so I mean, if you can give me a little time to work on that, I was trying
Okay.
to gauge the needs and some of the
Okay.
shifting still happening.
So is this the person that's responsible for the bill list? Is this the person that put the student's name on the original bill list that was posted?
It was an error
Yes.
made by the business department.
I'm open. I mean, if that was a regular employee, I think there would be discipline. I'm real concerned about that, putting a student's full name on the bill next to a special placement. So I hope that that's going to have a better control, because I know it's down now and changed, but it was up for 3 days. The other question I had about the bill list is that, and there maybe is an explanation. I know we don't have any kids in school, so there was, I would think, no busing. I noticed that there was a bill from First Student in Grand Prairie. So can I assume that you had some kind of a deal that you had with them, that they charge us X amount every month?
Yeah, the contract was in place, and that was Marty did the negotiation down of that, to a
Okay.
certain percentage.
Okay, but the thing is that, when I looked at it, Grand Prairie, that we're paying $46,000 to, had the word COVID indicated there. When I went to look at First Student, that's just our regular busing, it didn't have that. So I guess I have 2 questions. First of all, are they both kind of covered under COVID? Do we know if we're going to get any money from the state COVID funds? And have we gotten anything yet? So I don't need the answer. I mean, if you're not prepared now, I'm just throwing it out. As long as I don't have to wait 2 weeks
We can
again.
certainly answer right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we are expected to receive $507,000 for the
Okay,
foundation.
and so is, that word, because it said COVID next to the busing, so is the assumption that we're gonna pay for at least one of the bus?
No, I'm not sure why she put COVID next to the description, because we already earmarked the funds for the CARES Act, and we did not include the transportation.
Okay, so we're just gonna, because of the deal that was put out, we're just gonna pay for that, and COVID had nothing to do with it. And that's what caught my attention, was the busing, and then I thought, well, there's probably a reason for it. But then if we're gonna be able to pay for one from COVID funds, or whatever they're calling them, but we're not gonna get the other one. The other thing is that I noticed on the Village of Lyons billed us $302 for water, but it only had Costello listed. Now I know that I know George explained, that that's the water bill. People complain about the water being high in Lyons, but is $300 for nobody in the schools? Is that really only Costello? And I didn't see, I could have misread, so if somebody could just check that, if it is, it is what it is, but it just seemed like a lot of money for a school where there hasn't been any kids since the middle of March.
Is it really just for Costello?
No, I'm not sure, I don't work at that
Yeah.
department, but,
And then because we have all the other buildings, GW and the ad building and the garage and, you know,
For
Robinson.
housing, I think there's a minimal bill, like, people complains all the time, like, I got a bill for $35, and I wasn't home for 2 months.
Yeah,
There's a
There's
minimum bill.
probably a leak
And so the
somewhere.
more units,
The water has to be running somewhere.
yeah.
It's just
Well, the
very
basic bill, you know, we all get a basic bill, I get one too. But I just thought if it's only for Costello, I agree, I asked that before, and I was told that they checked and there were no leaks. It just seems if that's only for Costello, that's a lot of money for a building that's empty, unless, is that the basic bill?
we have a custodian still going in the school that
Yeah.
They take care
I don't know if it's gonna be that
rules
much.
cleaning and sanitizing this.
But
water.
it's not like kids are in there flushing the toilets and stuff.
Can
Can we just check on it to see?
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe it should have another building listed with it. I don't know, but I only saw Costello.
I'm the only person in my house, and my kids come in like every weekend. They don't really stay. They're older now, but I get a bill for like almost $100. So,
So I think
It went up
well,
$100.
and I understand that.
I'm the only
Yeah.
I wish mine was $100.
Yeah, well, and in Forestville, my basic water bill, I don't know what the basis is, I would say $90, whatever it is. So I understand that, but I just thought if somebody could just look into that. If that's what it is, that's what it is, but it just seemed like a lot. And then I had just one more thing. When I went through the bill list, the top of that bill list where they put the credit union and the TRS payments and Social Security and everything,
Part that comes from the township?
the one on the not the actual bill listing, on the bottom, you know, the top where it says what those were, I don't know what they call them, I can open it up. Where those are like special checks or something.
Oh, right.
And so, they give you an amount because we had like over $2 million in bills. So that top part is they give you a total for the top part and then a total for the bottom part. So when I went through it, I always go through the book. There was let's see. Okay, Healthcare Service Corporation. I'm assuming it says health insurance premiums, $350,222.22. Then, when you go down to, and this also happened last month, and I didn't catch it last month, but when I saw this, then I went back. If you go through the bill list, and you come down it's on page 1 of the bill list, it says Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now those are health care, and it's the same amount, $350,222.22. I just want to make sure that we haven't paid them $700,000 because it's listed as being those top parts are paid, and they're not indicated in the bill list because that's not the same kind of bill. The same thing happened in May. The health care at the top was $224,518. On the bill list for Blue Cross Blue Shield, it was $302,077. So if we could just look into that, because it really does look like it's listed, and maybe it was paid, and maybe the check came back, but if we could look on those two things, and if they were listed in error, maybe we can just figure out how to not do that again. Those are my questions. So I move we approve the bill list.
Wait.
You need a motion.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the bill list.
I just did.
presented. Okay.
I made that.
She
I'll
first.
second.
Do
Winifred? Okay.
we have a second?
Winifred.
Call the roll?
Okay. Olivia Quintero.
Yes.
Vito Campanelli.
Yes.
Marge Ubicek.
Yes.
Sharon Anderson.
Yes.
Winifred Rodriguez.
Yes.
And George Torres.
Yes. All right, moving on, action items, looking for a motion to approve the 2020-2021 intergovernmental agreement with West 40 Intermediate Service Center Number 2 for the purpose of transferring students into the West 40 Regional Safe Schools Program as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Comments?
I'll second.
I have a question, and compared to last year's contract, it's the same, has there been any changes?
I believe it's the same. Was there any changes? Sean?
I mean, I
think it
didn't,
was
I
the
didn't
same.
notice any, but.
Yeah, I didn't, there weren't any changes. Okay, Vito Campanelli,
Yes.
Mark Jubasek,
Yes.
Sharon Anderson,
Yes.
Winifred Rodriguez,
Yes.
Olivia Quintero,
Yes.
George Torres.
Yes. Motion passes. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn at 7:45 p.m. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All right. Oh, yeas?
Yes.
All right.